So this evening I'm going to talk about what no one tells you in therapy, what mainstream won't tell you, not because they're hiding, maybe they do, I don't know, but because that's not the full story. The whole idea, the whole narrative about the brain, it's just a framework, it's just an understanding that we have been perpetuating for such a long time that people believe it. And today I'm going to remove some of the brainwashing that you have been exposed to, right? You just bear with me. So you keep wanting to change, you keep thinking, you keep analysing, you keep watching people, listening to experts, probably going to therapy, listening to podcasts, or you keep going in denial about how you feel, about your life, about yourself. So today we're going to undo some of the bullshit that is normally promoted and pushed onto people. And it's like, the narrative is keep pushing, keep forcing, keep moving forward, but no one tells you how, and no one tells you why, even though you want to change, and you need to change, and you need to work on yourself, you need to heal. So at this point, the awareness is, that collective awareness is, like we all have trauma, we all have issues, we all have some kind of mental health issues, some kind of diagnosis, ADHD, personality disorder, anxiety, depression. So people are realizing, and now it's very difficult to avoid, right? The healing business is really big. It's business, it's a business. And people get stuck there. And they keep doing different programs, they keep going to different therapists, and they keep taking medication, but things are not changing, are they? Hi, Mel. Things are not changing. So I'm going to wait for a couple more people. Things are not changing. And you keep struggling. You keep feeling lost. You keep feeling empty. And you think, like, why can't I change, right? Why can't I change? And people usually take responsibility onto themselves and think, it must be me. There must be something wrong with me, right? So you arrive at this conclusion that if you keep wanting, if you keep trying, this is what I hear a lot. I keep trying, right? And it's like, oh yeah, keep trying, like buckle up and pull yourself together. And that creates dysregulation in your nervous system in itself. Because that's a very wrong idea, right? That's a very wrong idea. And you think, and then you diagnose yourself, you analyze yourself even more, right? You keep talking to the AI, you keep asking ChatGPT, how do I work on myself? How do I work on mental health? How do I work on my anxiety? Well, and again, that creates another loop. And now we are circling around and we are exhausted. Hi, Alison. We are exhausted. Still bit in a rat. Yes, we are exhausted. And this is not because there is something wrong with you, right? It's because your brain and your sense of self and your mind and your body are very loyal, and they're running the survival identity. So over the years, in your childhood, in your life, you have developed a set of behaviors, ways of thinking, patterns, how you are, of course due to your environment, right? And if you had a happy childhood, if you sort of found your way, your parents were very supportive or supportive enough, and you had your needs met, this is not for you. This is for people whose map, whose template as to how to be has been projected onto them, and they couldn't be themselves, they couldn't be authentic selves, and they've developed a survival identity, a set of behaviors and patterns, mental, psychological, emotional, to survive, basically, right? So in childhood, we need to be celebrated, nurtured, supported. I know that might be a very weird idea for some people, but this is what should happen. So your authentic self, your true deep self, is not going to crystallize, it's not going to, and you know it now, like if you're an adult and you go into an environment in which you can't be yourself, you can't express yourself, that you're judged, that you are criticized, right, rejected, then you become this version of yourself that is frightened, that you go into survival basically. And that's the main job of your nervous system, to keep you in survival. And your brain. Your brain is a part of central nervous system. So again, think about the little self. Think about yourself when you were growing up, right? What was allowed? How you were allowed to behave? What was not allowed? Everything that was not allowed but you wanted to do. And you know, these things get formed way before we develop speech and context. Way before. So you develop a way of being to survive that has nothing to do with who you truly are. Okay? So, but however, your nervous system, your body, your brain, your mind, and your ego are very creative. So you've created this survival identity. So basically, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And this is how you are emotionally at your core. This is how you had to become, so you live that way. And your nervous system is a learning machine. You are a learning machine and pattern recognition machine. And your brain gets shaped by experience, and then by repetition, those neural network become wired into you, right? And now you probably, hopefully you're safe, but those patterns, those unconscious patterns then run your life. And your brain automates, everything is automated, so you run on autopilot, okay? And unless you go deep into your nervous system and into your brain, and you understand how survival identity, you decode it, then you're going to be struggling, then you're going to be more anxious, then you're going to be more depressed, okay? So some of the choices, if end goal is to earn good money, it's taking risks to change careers for 1 year, not a wise move. I couldn't be myself, yes. Okay, that identity that you have, right, a set of patterns, even the fact that you're asking this question, is it a wise move? You keep doubting yourself, because that survival identity, which at the core is your nervous system state, right, is running those questions, is running those doubts. Because nervous system doesn't grow. You don't grow. You don't recalibrate your identity without very deliberate work. So it's not random. And that identity of yours that you have formulated in childhood, that at the core of, there is a state, right? There is a, if you've been unsafe in childhood, you couldn't be yourself. So that meant there were threats to your being. There were judgments. There were, hopefully, there was some kind of nutrition, as I call it, for the nervous system. But most of all, if you grew up in a chaotic household around addiction, anything, right? Anything. For me, the fact that someone abdicated responsibility for you, that encodes you with self-neglect already and self-doubt. You don't trust yourself, what you feel, you get disconnected from your body, and you abandon the idea of being authentic, you abandon the idea of trusting yourself, right? So you don't really believe in yourself, because all those beliefs are being formulated in childhood. And if someone wasn't giving you feedback that what you say, think and do, right, it's worth pursuing. This is the biggest loss in childhood. This is the biggest loss of authenticity and creativity. So your brain learns that you can't really be expressing yourself, and you develop a pattern, a loopy pattern, right? And you run it throughout life. My how to take a rest, but head fears that there will be massive financial loss. Had to decide. Yeah. So if you couldn't be authentic, keep listening. If you couldn't be authentic, then, as I said, you developed a set of patterns, of thinking patterns, and you stay in that identity, and that identity is very stubborn. It's first of all subconscious, so this is where I come in, this is where I make you conscious, this is where I make you aware, this is where you can observe your patterns, right? Because you have very, very specific patterns. But at the core, what is it, and people are, so nervous system can, if it's safe, if everything is safe and social, and your nervous system feels it's safe to connect, it's safe to be myself, it's safe to self-express, so to process things as they come, then you go into parasympathetic, you live in a state of flow, rest, digest and regenerate, which is, like quite a mind-blowing idea for a lot of people, including myself, a decade and a half ago, but that's the truth, okay? And if you were unsafe, then you develop this identity. There was a lot of threats, there was a lot of punishment, there was a risk to you being yourself, to you expressing yourself, physically, emotionally, psychologically, right? Because it's all about feedback. If your consciousness didn't receive feedback from the environment that you were safe to do that, then nervous system goes into survival, body goes into, and brain goes into survival. And then you live that identity, okay? You live that identity. The main patterns that happen to be that in opposition to the flow state, the parasympathetic state, so sympathetic is a stress response, chronic stress, chronic chaos, lack of predictability, lack of boundaries, lack of safety, psychological, mental, emotional, and for a lot of people, physical, right? So your experience shapes your response. Your experience shapes your nervous system. And you have 5 choices. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and hide. They're very distinctive in the sense that nervous system, the body, animals, children, adults, think about how you function, right? Your body reads your environment at all times. And because you have been unconscious about this, things take over, right? So you haven't been in charge of yourself because for most of your life, you were helpless and disempowered by adults around you. And if those adults hello, if those adults were emotionally immature, they projected their ways onto you, you have learned, and they've shaped your sense of self, they've shaped your sense of identity, right? And in sympathetic response, in the stress response, what choices do you have as a child? You either go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is mobilization of energy. In other words, anxiety, right? A lot of things happen physiologically in the body. There is mobilization of energy for action. This is all action. And anxiety. So you know the drill. Tension, heartbeat, sweating, inability to think because your amygdala is activated, your brain, your prefrontal cortex, your higher thinking processes, that gets hijacked. That's why people, and this is this is a biological mechanism, so that's why it's very difficult to think, to have a conversation, to do anything really, right? So you either go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is anxiety, or your nervous system collapses into hiding. I call it hide. This is a shutdown, collapse of your inner resources, commonly known as depression, commonly known as a state in which there's very, very little energy in your system and you can't really move, you can't do much because the energy in your system, this is a lot of energy in the system and this is very little energy in the system. And over years, your nervous system goes into one of those states, and that depends who you are, what kind of tendencies you have, what kind of temperament you have. And this is your protection adaptive response. So when it comes to your anxiety or depression, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you stress, the way you disassociate from this, because it's very uncomfortable for the body, is not your fault and there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually a protective survival strategy of your nervous system. This is how clever, this is how amazing, and this is how creative the nervous system is. Wise and intelligent, right? You had nothing to do with those decisions. You had nothing to do with those patterns. This is why the health starts to go downhill too. Of course, why? Because if there is adrenaline and cortisol and under stress, so many different chemical things are happening. Your body, think about your body, is billions of cells. Everything is connected with everything. Nervous system is like literally everything is connected with everything. And your body is in charge, not you as a person, right? You need to understand that mental health is a physiological experience. You feel it, you label it here because the mind is the interpreter, but actually everything happens in the body. There's no such thing as mind and body connection. It's all one. And it communicates. So if you've been running those patterns for such a long time, this is how you've been wired, and this is how you are wired. You are wired for survival first. And then you can only grow and evolve in safety, right? In safety in your body. Those patterns then become stronger and more consolidated, more wired into you. About the physical health, cortisol goes into the tissues, into the gut lining, into the joints. This is the stress response. So if you had suffered these things as a child, you have to process that. You can't really change anything on the mind level if you don't rewire the body through experience of safety. If you don't work with yourself, if you don't know how to be present within your body and how to become conscious about those patterns. These are the people who have a sense of intensity, have a sense of forcing, literally fighting reality, and the fight doesn't have to be physical. These are the people who overdo things and they're on the constant go, right? Perfect candidates for burnout. They have a lot of energy, they get committed, like they're committing to the environment, right? So whatever they do to 100%, whether it's partying, working, socializing, or resting, right? They can't rest. That's the nervous system that has been running this pattern for years, and that's the part of survival identity. Fantastic news is that this is also how you do life. So you get a lot done, but you take too much responsibility, you take too much on your plate, you are overcommitted, this is how you stay in control, okay? So you think that if you take control of everything and you do things perfectly and you make yourself responsible, this is how because we all need to have agency over our environment. And this is the action that you take. This is your kind of anxiety, right? However, if you keep running this pattern, you get a lot done, but you're going to be burnt out. You do anyway. Every day you collapse. You don't stop, slow down, you collapse. The only thing that makes you stable is being on the go. You feel guilty when you rest. You're constantly running to-do lists and to places to be at. And this is you abandon yourself a lot, and you are considered by your family, by your boss, the strong one, the one who always has it together. And you build a persona around this. The ego builds a persona around this. No one ever asks you how you're doing. No one cares, because you are always the one who has it all together. You are always the one who is doing things for others. You are the generator, okay? You are the generator. It's all done in stress, but who cares? You find a way to cope, to manage. Yes, you create a lot, but you are exhausted, right? You are exhausted. So it's still a stress response. It has good sides and challenges. It's challenges, okay? But on the whole, that's the basis for your archetype. This is how you do life, how you do relationships. You find things that are slow. Yeah, this is your pattern of being in life, right? Even if things are okay around you, you can't enjoy them because you can't never slow down. Flight. These are the people who have learned in childhood to deal with the stress, the chaos, the rejection, the whatever, to keep themselves safe by fleeing the scene, by removing themselves. This is how they kept themselves safe. In adulthood, they're called aloof, avoidant. These are the extroverted people, these are the introverted people. So, again, nothing wrong with that. It is the way in which you've learned to survive. You're introverted, you've learned to survive. You're introverted and shy, you have social anxiety, they call it social anxiety. It's called, in the social context, it's called social anxiety. So connection is unsafe, right? You don't want to share yourself. You think that actually you don't value, no one values what you have to say, to do. No one values your impact, your input. These people, fight people, they overvalue their input, and flight people, they undervalue their input. So they think, it's not important what I say, what I do, right? I just withdraw, isolate. run. And you can do that physically, you can do that emotionally. So you literally disassociate. You disengage, you undercommit. Right? Okay. Then the freeze people. These are the people who they have a lot of different ideas. They have a lot to express, but it's almost like the nervous system can't decide. You do a lot, you overwhelm yourself a lot, but then you collapse. So like you're in between states. This is ADHD energy. This is the brain that having been shown how to close the loop, how to execute things, right? So for whatever reason in your environment, you couldn't be the one who, finishes things. So you start a lot of things, you open a lot of tabs in your brain, but you can't close any of them, or you find it overwhelming, or it's exhausting. Just that pendulum is very exhausting. Like they're all exhausting in their own way. These are the people who family or society perceives as unreliable. These are the people who call themselves lazy, disorganized, unmotivated. This is a nervous system state. It's not a personality, it's not a trait, right? A lot of what you do, a lot of what people do is a state issue, not a trait issue. Personality doesn't really exist, it's an illusion. What we've been told by psychologists and by there has been so many frameworks, as you know, so many experts talking to you about the outer ideas, the labeling, the diagnosis, but no one talked to you about the inner state of the nervous system. Fawn. These are the people pleasers, the good boy, good girl syndrome. Always agreeing, always playing by the rules, always guessing. What do they want from me? What are their expectations? This is someone who lives outside of themselves. Completely. Right? Again, there's nothing wrong with that. This is a very good tendency. These are the people who are very community-based and they're great listeners, etc. But this is the self-abandonment, because the needs, your individual needs, they don't go anywhere, right? You need yourself, you need to be seen, you need to know your needs. What are they? Who are you? On a deeper level, not on the survival level, and they have a cost, right? So the cost in people pleasing, and that is global phenomenon. This is interesting. Wow. It's a kind of really good feeling. I think if you help enough people. This is no. Yes, so all your nervous system is doing is protecting you. And your brain is very loyal to that protector. Your brain is very loyal to that survival strategy that you have developed as a child. Think about it. What other choices did you have? Was authenticity and choice? It wasn't. Right? So this is energy, this is anxiety, these are different patterns. And, obviously there are a lot of different, your consciousness is very creative. So you will channel the anxiety, you will channel the adrenaline and the cortisol in a lot of different ways. OCD, health anxiety, there are like perfectionism. These are all ways to feel in control because you haven't been feeling in control as a child. And we all want to play, have an impact, sense of agency over what goes on around us. And if we can't play in an authentic way, creative, peaceful, flowy, then we're going to be playing in the nervous way, right? So your anxiety has nothing to do with who you are. There's no such thing as anxious personality. There's no such thing as a depressive personality. This one gets me the most. And you know, you're running all this stress. Good. The good news is, it's a way that your nervous system has found to express the stress, right? That's very good. However, if you have not been able to express the stress, because none of these were these were not the option, right? These were not the option. Then your nervous system goes into collapse and shutdown. So that's shutdown and collapse, right? I call it hide mode. You had to hide. I met a lot of people who had to sleep through their childhood just to keep themselves safe. This is the nervous system that is burnt out, grieving. These are the feelers. They feel a lot, right? They feel a lot and they just go into collapse. So again, depression is a nervous system state, and is a nervous system that has been completely dysregulated. And this is what dysregulates nervous system, because the patterns that you had to develop as a child for survival purposes, then they have nothing to do with the needs of your body, right? Your body has been running on emergency mode for a very long time. And I want you to now wire this into yourself, that mental health is not mental. Anything can be changed, anything can be rewired by your consciousness. The fact that you're listening to this and it resonates, right? It means that it's already in you, because it is. So we're just activating your wisdom, your intelligence. We just activate. You need to understand that your nervous system will never do anything against you. Your brain will never do anything against you. You're not self-sabotaging. You are protected. That's a protective mode. Because your nervous system has to learn, has to be taught how to be safe, to upgrade itself. Okay. Pursue our passions. What is the normal mode? The default for people, what's the state? You're a human being, right? So how are you being when you're safe and social? When you can be absolute self? The parasympathetic expression. This is what I teach in my programs, right? You have a version of yourself that is free, that is expressive, that is not hypervigilant, that is not disassociated. When your heart is open, you can think, you can create, you can express yourself emotionally, physically, mentally. Yeah, financial security. JB. Every person in here, in survival identity, your brain doesn't work properly. So everyone overthinks, but they overthink a different thing. Right? When you're trying to outthink your state, and that is the biggest crime against humanity, that people have been separated from their bodies and they've been told it's all in your brain. No. The body that is not safe, that is in emergency, survival, identity, survival mode, then the brain doesn't work properly. What I mean by this, again, you have prefrontal cortex, the forehead bit, which is the latest addition to evolution, which is where you do your thinking, where you create, where you think critically, problem solve, when you control your impulses, where you've got your working memory, right? Which is what is working memory? Working memory is the ability of your brain to keep three things for example, at the same time. So I've been doing this 5 minutes ago, now I'm doing this, and this is going to lead me to that. When the body is scared and in survival, when the energy is reorganized, the blood literally is drawn from the prefrontal cortex, because the perception, just thinking about your future and problem solving, is irrelevant, and the brain reorganizes itself. The same with digestion, right? Your digestion changes when you're stressed. And it all happens in milliseconds. So your perception in survival identity is distorted. So you will be looping, you will be overthinking, either the past or the future. Depression is usually about the past, what has happened. So you get stuck. You get stuck and you think it's you, right? And then you're trying to just, no, it's not you. It's your body feeling unsafe. It's your body being in survival. It's you living in survival identity. That identity creates a set of problems, relationship problems, job problems, work problems, whatever. And that identity has a ceiling for everything. How you see love, whether you think you're worthy, what do you think you deserve, right? Because that's the experience. The body has been listening to the story from others, your wonderful family, and yourself, because you are firmer. Because for the first 7 years of your life, your parents are your gods, right? And that God, like, you don't have a memory of what was happening. You just remember bits, or you don't remember nothing, because your brain, your psyche, has decided to hide it away from you because it was too difficult to process. So the body is holding a lot of emotions, shame, blame, guilt, helplessness, right? And without processing that, you will be achieving the same results. With money, with relationship, same problems will be showing up in your life constantly, same. Stop blaming yourself. Suffering from OCD intrusive thoughts taking over my life. It will, JB. It will. Because right? Because it takes over everything. So your brain is part of the whole ecosystem of your consciousness. Okay? And this inner state creates a worldview. That has to do with your perception. In survival identity, you don't have perspective. You have perception. That is looking for threats, looking for problems, looking for ways for more. That's why the way you perceive under stress, you can't think, you can't focus, because this is your prefrontal cortex, okay? This is your prefrontal cortex. Not being offline, basically. Not having blood flow there. Everything psychological can be mapped within your body. And then you can have it. I'm not going into, deep stuff, because that's not the point. My intention is for people to understand that how you have become, how you are, has nothing to do with your potential, has nothing to do with authenticity. That identity that you have created and any expression is for survival purposes only. So no point in shifting your mindset. You can't outthink your state. You can't make your body believe in something that your body has not experienced. Beliefs are in your body, right? Another crime. They weaponized your body against you, right? The system has told you that the brain and the mind are the most important and everything happens in the brain. No, everything happens in the body. 85% of signals from your environment, right? Think about when you're cold, when you're hot. Where do you feel hot and cold? In your brain or in your body? When you when you stub your toe, when you swim it, whatever. It's the body takes the sensory information and sends it to the brain through the vagus nerve. If there is no safety, emotional, psychological, there is judgment, there is, emotional consequences, you've been manipulated, you've been put down, you've been humiliated by your experiences, and this is what most people suffer with. Most families are dysfunctional, immature. Most people who maybe now it's changing, so the awareness is growing, but the way we've been bringing up children is absolutely against nature. So you don't even have to be abandoned, especially, but you can be abandoned emotionally. Right? So if someone wasn't celebrating you, someone wasn't happy to see you, wasn't curious about you, hey, tell me what you think, right? Didn't spend time with you, didn't play with you, right? Every animal plays with their children, but not me, not us. Well, we are busy. Even if you had a mother who is physically present, but she was busy with other things. Presence is being in the present moment with the children. I can't even see that happening today. So this is how you've been programmed. You've been programmed for self-abandonment. You've been programmed to think that, and obviously that's the belief. If a child if I'm being ignored, then do I think I'm important? Of course not. So the belief system, the body, what the body believes, right? Then you believe about yourself. And then in your mind, you rationalize it. Oh, it wasn't that bad. They tried their best. Other people had it better. You know the drill, right? You know the drill. You make sense and give us hope. Loved it. So, first thing that happens, how you are being in survival identity has nothing to do with you, your potential. And it's not about IQ, it's not about qualification or education or nothing. No. And more importantly, on the social level, they know it. And this is being manipulated. Your nervous system and your consciousness and your sense of identity is being under threat at all times. Everything you consumes and are exposed to, your body reads, right? Your body reads. And the consumption, it could be psychological and mental, but everything has an emotional charge attached to it. And everything now is fear-based. So yeah, amygdala is being activated at all times. At all times. Your nervous system is hijacked. We're going to go to that. Okay. So the first thing, we're going to go to the soothing behaviors. I will explain every single habit or addiction in the next 20 minutes. Okay? Off we go. So the first experience is the feeling. How did you feel most of the time as a child? Seen, that you belonged, so were your needs met? What do we need as children, as people, as human beings? We need to know we belong. We need to be seen. We need to participate. And we need to self-express. These are the 4 basics, right? From the minute you are born, right? I'm not talking about food and shelter, because that's obvious. I'm talking about your nervous system. But, you know, there are people who survive with no food. Prana. The body keeps the score, precisely. I would by nature be a very bubbly person who loves to be on the move. This is my nature. Maybe this is why I'm always wanting new things. If your needs were not met as a child, so you didn't belong, you were not seen, you were not significant, you didn't participate, you're going to meet your needs in other ways, in destructive ways. Right? Because your heart in childhood, your nervous system is either your heart is filled with love or with guilt and shame, unfortunately, your body, right? So, but then their needs don't go anywhere. So you're going to make yourself seen. You're going to make yourself belonging to rooms that will be very destructive. You're going to get involved with people because you're confusing love and belonging with what you've experienced. You're going to recreate your experience. That's the oldest universal truth in the mind realm, right? We recreate the patterns, we recreate. That's why people don't know what red flags are, because if you grew up around red flags, they're going to be green flags, and nervous system always pulls towards what's familiar. Poverty or wealth, culture or cheap television, right? If you grew up around chaos, excuse me, I have to take the bread out of the oven. Babe? Right. I'm back. So the first experience is the feeling, how you felt. This is the primary experience. Think about a baby, when the baby is cold, wet, right, hungry, it screams. So the feeling, it's not the words, right? Way before you develop speech. So this is how the state is being created. If you were unsafe, right, then you have those states that we talked about. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn and hide. The secondary layer of experience is emotion. So the feeling, how you were treated, creates an emotional layer. And if you, in those, it's mainly fear, being scared, right? This is adrenaline and cortisol. And in collapse and shutdown, which is depression, what is the feeling? Helplessness, shame, guilt, And you can have a lot of different colors here, because fear, and then obviously emotionally we have a plethora of emotions, right? A plethora to choose from. But they are low vibration emotions. They're not high vibration. So they're not love, joy, inspiration, creativity, whatever. They're curiosity, or authenticity, you know, being yourself. In survival identity, you become a frightened animal inside and your nervous system. And then, you know, as I said, your consciousness, it will sort of shape something with that fear, right? And again, you know, you run, right? In fight, you forever on the run. In flight, you forever avoiding. In freeze, you forever stuck in between states. In fawn, you forever pleasing. In depression, in collapse, you know, you feel sad, numb. In chronic depression, it's actually people don't feel anything, they're numb. But hopeless, you can have a lot of different emotions. The lowest vibrational emotions are shame, guilt, hopelessness, helplessness, apathy. So these are all very deep in your nervous system. And they're not going to kill you, don't worry. I know you may be triggered, but we need to talk about these things, because once you become aware what is running your life, then you can upgrade your identity. Then you can release it. You can't release anything that you're not aware of. Okay? And the problem is, emotionally, we are children, and as a society, we have no context in which to express emotions. Think about what happens when you go to someone and you start crying. Regina, how then to unhijack your nervous system to go into conflict? It's a process to unhijack your nervous system, to take control of your nervous system. You need to understand the mechanism behind this. You need to understand the mechanism behind this, and you need to understand your specific sequence. Because a person who is in fight needs totally different regulation to a person who is a people pleaser, because they have different issues and they behave very differently, which I'm going to talk about. So emotion, but you can, you know, if you're frightened all the time, you're also sad that you're frightened, right? If you're frightened all the time as a child, because you grow up around addiction, let's say, you hold a lot of shame, right? Your father is a tyrant, there is a lot of violence, and you don't want that to be happening, and you think it's your fault. This is what children do. If you are accused about being too loud, too this, too stupid, too shy, whatever, or not looking the right way, that's a big one, right? The appearance, right? This is what happens in survival identity, right? There's a lot of criticism on people, on children, how they look. They're too fat, they're too thin, they're too short, there's constant judgment. So you end up being on trial at all time. So that's why a lot of people feel guilt for no reason. If you're still terrified. So this is emotion, this is emotional state. Then the mind narrates it. The ego builds a story. about your worthiness, about, and the story follows state. So the story that you tell yourself comes from a feeling. You will never have someone who feels shame, fear, or whatever, but they live a wonderful life because their sense of self, they will be masking, and you might think, oh, they have it all together, they're doing great. No, that's masking, right? Which we may or may not go into. But the mind is a narrator of the inner experience. This is how your consciousness is structured, architectured. So, if you're still terrified from all help, oh yeah, hello. Right? Story follows state. And this is where your sense of self is being built, is being constructed. So, as I said, if you have a lot of good experiences or some good experiences, let's say these are the people who had, you know them, like the people who don't understand because their mother loved them and they love their parents and the parents love them back, and that was always the case, and they had an amazing childhood or good enough childhood. They can't comprehend that, because if they felt safe, supported, celebrated, listened, worthy of someone's time, there was justice, so they were treated equally with their siblings, because there's another layer on the sibling thing, right? A lot of abuse comes from that. A lot of bullying comes from siblings. Then they don't have any of that. They have love, they have kindness, they have joy in life. And then the mind will tell them, I am okay, I am capable, I am loved, right? So the perception is the inner perception, guys. It's not what your brain does. You can't really change anything on the mind level if you don't go into the state, if you don't regulate from the state. So this is where you shape your sense of identity. You affirm it. I am, the world is, and people are. That's the main structure. These are the first things that are being shaped in our mind based on our experience. I am comes from the way you were treated. The world is your idea, your concept about the world comes from your experience, because, as I said, for the good decade of your life, you think your world ends 2 streets away. Your family is in your home, is your planet. And then you start visiting your friends and you learn, but you're very loyal. You're very loyal because you need to belong and you need to survive. You have no option. So you work out the way not to say anything. Dysfunctional families are very shush, right? We don't show because dysfunctional families are holding a lot of shame. I'm not even talking about very serious things. And people are. If your parents didn't love you, if you were, what were the rules, right? And everything they were talking about, their way of living programs you. This is the first system that programs you. So now you can go and educate yourself. You can go to Cambridge, as far as I'm concerned. But your psyche is programmed by the first conflicts and unresolved conflicts. Your idea about the world and whether you're deserving of love or whatever It's the emotional state that you are in. Look at the politicians, right? They're completely disconnected from their heart. They're completely disconnected. I'm not going to go into this because I'm going to lose it. So that's the mind, right? This is the psyche is very busy. And you make it through. You make sure. This is how creative your nervous system is. How we deal with that shit, you somehow, you're here, you're listening. This is how creative, wise, intelligent your nervous system is. But those patterns get consolidated every day, year in, year out, okay? This is what needs to be changed and upgraded. This is where the work is. So, and the last, this is the inner story, as I call it. This is the inner, what happens in you. And the outer story is behaviors, actions, and habits. Couple of things on emotions. Couple of things on the state of the body, of the nervous system. We mask it. We pretend that we are feeling differently. We build a persona around the state for no one to find out. You don't want the people, because you are a loner, right? People with trauma are loners. They don't trust anyone. They don't share themselves. They numb themselves. They disconnect and they cope and manage, but you don't share yourself. So you created a set of personas in order to survive and disconnect. This is very painful, right? This is years of neglect and abuse. So this is very painful. You don't want anyone to find out, right? You don't say. You want to forget. You suppress it. And what happens when you suppress? You get depressed. Or you get panic attacks, panic disorder, agoraphobia. You stop. Your life shrinks, right? Your life shrinks. You're scared of everything, or you isolate, you withdraw, you don't live your life, right? You sort of collapse into yourself. That's why it's very difficult. That's why people who are anxious, they live in anxiety state, their nervous system does, and it's very difficult to know where your nervous system is unless you have a panic attack. Because by my estimation is that people are so stressed that they think this is their personality. What happened in our society is that we forgot what is natural. What is natural is flow, is creativity, is authenticity. And but for whatever reason, the society, to keep you as a returning client, because everything is a business now, including your mind, your body. So what is normal, natural, which is this, it's natural reaction to the environment, to be wanting to fight back, to be wanting to be protecting yourself, but you couldn't, and became your fault. You are blamed for the experiences, and that's been normalized. So it's normal to have anxiety, or it's normal to have depression. No. Just because everyone is having it doesn't mean it's normal and natural. Human beings should be playing. Human beings should be joyous. Human beings should be present. Human beings should be in control of themselves. That's the nature of your consciousness, right? But your attention has not been with yourself until today. And other things that had been, so as I said, natural things have been pathologized. So this is an illness now. It's not a normal reaction to the sick environment. This is an illness. And things are actually pathological, like no boundaries, like getting yourself trashed, drinking, overeating, and everything that dysregulates you, that's normal. So now I'm going to give you an explanation. The body that is stressed in adrenaline and cortisol is an exhausted body. We are wired for two things: avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. Pain, psychological pain, emotional pain, struggle, shame is heavy. Things are heavy. You carry them. Your body carries them. Your body holds on to this stress. And that's uncomfortable. So what are you going to do? Where is your power? You're going to drink. You're going to eat. Hence the emotional eating. You're going to numb. And you will mask. You're going to shop. Because for 20 minutes, and people who shop, they don't even open the packages. It's the feeling of pressing, and they go collect things in their cart, right? Just the feeling of chasing. That's the attention. That's a respite from how you feel, right? It's there is a lot happening when you perform those behaviors, but it's a respite from how you feel. It's a relief. I call them soothing behaviors. Shopping, smoking, drugs, right? You want to run away from yourself. You want to numb, right? You want to forget how you feel. People with trauma are loners. I could listen to you all day. This lady is so good. Her thanks, Andy. Right? So what is your ing? How do you cope? These are coping mechanisms. This is how you manage your inner state. This is how you escape, right? This is how you, cope. It costs a lot of money. It is exhausting. It's another loop, right? Because you're very often spending money you don't have. When it comes to food, it's never an avocado or lettuce. It's either carbs, it's sugar, because once you give your body something to think about, to redirect the attention from the stress response, that's why when you eat carbs, it's like a hug from the inside, okay? Some people it's sugar, but it's just, you feel better, right? You create a hype in yourself. So you create a lift, a moment of elevation. Alcohol for 20 minutes is the fastest anti-anxiety drug on earth. Agent, not a drug. Well, it's a legal drug, right? So this is the relief that you're chasing the relief. You're not chasing that thing. You're chasing the feeling that it's going to give you. If you're feeling shit inside, heavy, everything is pointless, because as I said, the world is what? When you're anxious? Scary. So you don't want to be scared all the time, so you drink. I'm simplifying things. But this is a sacred sequence. This is what runs your life. This is your boss. Your nervous system is your boss. It's protecting you. Your brain takes the commands from the body. And here you are, going to a talking therapy for 3 years, or seeing and I was a therapist, so I can say these things, or you see a healer. This is why it's so nice to take a warm bath or a hot bath, because it's a sensory, it's a feeling of safety, and there are certain things that regulate, but what is important for your nervous system is everyday choices, In your mind, you have a very powerful force, which is your ego. Your ego can be inferior or superior. So like these are the complexes of the psyche, very old. You have a lot of shadow. You, of course, you do, like everybody. Satisfied, that is a good word. You fed your desires, even if I can. Anything, again. Desire is a very good way to distract yourself, yes, because these are all distractors. Desire is a very good way to distract yourself. However, like with any habit, whatever you're doing, shopping, performing, working, for a lot of people is working. They can't stop. They come home after 10 hours and they open the laptop. Not to be in their body, right? It's dating. It's being busy. It's going to restaurants, depending on your budget. It's all budget dependent. And depending what's acceptable, what's available. Everyone drinks? Yeah, let's drink, right? So this is how we avoid the pain inside. This is how we mask. This is how we numb. And the thing is, the dose has to be increased. Anything that comes from the outside, you will want more of it, whatever that is. Working, drinking, smoking, dating, buying a certain things, control, like it's impossible. Because, you know, a lot of people consider themselves really tough and really capable. And this is how you sort of show, this is how you feel in control as well. So that's the habits, that's the actions, that's behaviors. And whatever that is for you, it has nothing to do with the substance, it has nothing to do with what you need, it has nothing to do with who you are. It's just the society is set up in a way to keep you there. And a lot of different businesses are made around this need. A very good example is the beauty industry. Because women have been told that they need to be looking in a certain way, and the more pain inside there is, the more intense the masking is, right? The same with houses. Like if you think the home, the atmosphere, sometimes I wish I didn't know these things. So yeah, soul destroying. So this is, I guess, escape is my distraction. There are a lot of them, you know, there's Netflix, there's drama, there is gossip, anything that will keep you away from how you feel in your body. Anything that will affirm the disconnection. Because it's just comfort. I've moved now 14 times in my life, wow. Not even English. What do you mean, Nancy? And we all want to, remember, your needs didn't go anywhere, so you still want to belong, you still want to be seen, perceived, contribute. So you are meeting a lot of needs, but you're not aware of them. And this identity will create the same thing. Your life, your reality will be the same. Because you are feeling it feels like you. It's just me, I like it. You think you like it. Right? It's just a relief. If you haven't processed the trauma, the neglect, you're going to recreate the same thing, because identity creates your experience. The inner identity creates your outer experience. So if you want to stop drinking, stop doing, if you want to increase your income, find a relationship, right? Because this is vibration. We're talking vibration, right? This is Map of Consciousness by Hawkins, which corresponds with my teachings, but I talk about this. This is vibration. This has been measured. Thousands and thousands of people, their emotional, their tension in the muscles, not in the brain. You know, psychiatry has no single test to confirm anything, right? None. Are you from UK? I lived in the UK for 20 years. I was trained in the UK, educated in the UK, but now I live in Spain. So these are for people who like vibration, who understand, starting to understand energy, quantum field, right? These are the sort of things that are now becoming very known, which I'm very happy about. When you're holding on to shame, that's the lowest vibration. But this is your identity, other words known as 3D, body as self. When you've got either victim or abuser consciousness. These are levels of consciousness, up unto enlightenment. Me versus them. You feel separated from everything and everyone. You feel not important. You feel it's you are the only one suffering. And have you noticed that there is always someone to blame? It's never the government. It's never how things are set up. It's never the environment you are in. It's just the same as in your dysfunctional family. It was always someone else's fault, right? It was the neighbors. It was the in-laws. It was the stupid whatever, the immigrant, whatever, right? It was never your parents. They were not accountable. And it's the same with the government. They're never accountable. This is how you're being, okay, who is to blame? And depending on what country, even part of the country you come in, is never the environment. No one is taking the responsibility for the environment, but we're always looking for someone to blame. It's very natural, right? Wherever you go, any community you enter these days, church, whatever country, this is my third country that I'm living, European country, right? And like wherever you go, it's never us, it's them. So this is us versus them consciousness. This is the ego self, stuck in negative emotional patterns and lack of faith in self and the higher power. Higher power is your heart. Whatever you want to say about this, the heart is your brain. Actually, should be your brain. But what did they tell you? Well, you're just a piece of meat. So okay, let me deal with that. Babe, weź tą Nancy. Okay. Okay, she's blocked. So, stuck in negative emotional patterns. Because each one of those rings is a loop, right? This is depression, so look, that corresponds. This is energy, this is lack of energy, because this is really close to being unalived. And fear, it's energy, as I told you, mobilization of energy for action. And desire, it's still in the survival identity, what we just talked about when it comes to, who said it, that they chase desire. Right? Anger and pride. Pride still indicates superiority to someone, right? And to whoever. So this is ego-based self. This has nothing to do with your personality or your potential. Your potential is here, people. Your potential is here. This is where the bliss is. This is where the joy is. This is where the inspiration is. This is where your heart, when you open your heart, which you cannot do in survival identity, this is where the Holy Grail is. So that's the structure. If you want to engage with my work, couple of things. Wednesday 22nd of April, I'm running a free masterclass called Meet Your Nervous System. So I'll be going into those states very specifically. You need to know which one are you, because it has a very specific, when it comes to fight, for example, then you need to know your emotions related to that, and what's the story, and what are the behaviors that you are doing to soothe yourself, to cope, right? That's why it's very important, because then when you know your state specifically, then you know how to regulate your nervous system. Because a lot of people are regulating the nervous system the wrong way, against themselves. So they go and do, I don't know, cold exposure, somatic therapy, whatever. But actually, this is overstimulated nervous system, this is understimulated nervous system. So it's totally different. There's a lot of nuance in this, in your nervous system, because it's not like when you're very dysregulated, so a complex PTSD, maybe, yes, right? It's everything. But the idea here, why can't you use Zoom, Alison? You can download it on your phone, you know. And just one more thing. The behaviors here, if you don't respect your body, if you're not connected with your body, if you don't know the needs of your body, the habits, actions and behaviors will reflect that. Yeah? If you don't love your body, you're not going, the healthy eating or the appropriate eating, shall I say, or movement or whatever, it's not going to be on the cards, right? Or high standards. This is, in survival identity, people have very low standards. How they treat themselves, how they allow others to treat them. Boundaries, emotional boundaries, psychological boundaries. What they're exposing themselves to. I need to wait a few seconds. Can I ask you guys to keep tapping, please, if you find this useful? Can you keep tapping? Thank you very much. So, survival identity. You were unsafe, and you have set of emotions, your mental state, so what happens in your mind, and actions and behaviors. Right? And your identity creates your experience, right? So your inner world creates your outer world. That's why when you have the same event and 5 people are watching the same event, and it doesn't have to be emotionally charged or anything, they're going to see different things, different aspects. They're going to hear different aspects, because you have a very unique level from which you operate, and what your brain filters, what it sort of accepts, because it will never accept anything, your brain, that is in a mismatch between how you feel. Right? Never. And then you have, let's say, your authentic identity, right? I was just thinking how to word it. Right? When you are safe, when you experience safety, and what are the emotions that you would like to be feeling in that authentic self, in that parasympathetic response? When you safe, social, in flow, right? Because what at the moment people are creating from this on their dreams, their goals, what you want to do, the change you want to do, it's here, it's an idea, it's in your mind, it's your, like, you dream, and you have that version of you, that little version of you that played, was free, etc. And hopefully you've experienced that. But you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because you remember this. You remember maybe when you were young and strong and creative and at school, or I don't know, at university, or in love. That's a very good one. In love. You were in love, for example. Or when you, doesn't matter, when your emotional state was elevated and you felt like full, whole, capable, in flow, right? These are your dreams and desires and aspirations. And this is what keeps you stuck. Because this version of you has a completely different emotional state, has a completely different mental state. So what was that? I am, the world is, people are, right? And also, that person takes completely different action, completely different behaviors, and completely different, habits. And a lot of people, this is what you experience when you're changing, evolving, you are in between the worlds. You are in between identities. This is why people sometimes, they do something, or something good happens and they feel the elevation, but they don't stay there, because your body will pull you back into here constantly, because it doesn't trust the future. Someone said something about trust. Sandy. Unfortunately, a lot of times, because of circumstance, can be. Exactly. Thanks, Jamski. And if you have consolidated the self here, it feels like I am. You think you identify with all these things that you have been doing, all these patterns, and this is all what your I am is. And if they don't even touch, I don't know where you are, where your consciousness is, right? So, you can have a state in which, for example, some people at home, they have a shitty relationship. For example, I'm making things up. But they love their job. So how they treated at home is not good, right? Their relationship is shit. But at home they have this world where they're competent, where they're in flow, right? And they live in two worlds. There is a lot of friction, there is, right? But they live in sort of like, they have one foot in each world, and that's very difficult. And you are doing this anyway. Like when you go to and see your family, you're someone else. When you go and see your friends, you're someone else. When you upgrade your job, you become someone else. So you are not, it's not set in stone, right? You need to understand is that your identity is fluid. Everything can be played, but you need to be very deliberate about this. You can create this version of yourself because it is there. Your consciousness is capable of being recalibrated, but it needs deliberate work. It needs deliberate work. And it's affirmed by the way you live your life. Because you run this thing every day, 24/7, whether you're conscious about it or not. So the trick here is to become conscious about who you want to be, depending on where you are and how, but internally, because the shifts happen internally first. You have to work on the state. You have to exit the survival identity. You have to learn how, and you have to do it consistently enough so your body starts to feel safe with you and you feel safe in your body. You have to stop lying to your body, stop hating your body, stop hating your brain, your mind, yourself, because your body is constantly listening, right? And be present and aware. This is what we're fighting against here. People ignorance about their power, right? Because I know it's difficult and I have a lot of compassion and I understand the process is difficult, but whatever you're doing now is more difficult because living in survival is exhausting, it makes you sick, it creates problems, it's chaos, it's being lost, empty and fed up with life and hating life. It actually ends with hating life, being bitter, being resentful, hating something or someone or yourself. And the only way is down. Whilst you create this idea, and that's very specific, right? Very specific. Your idea of flow and authenticity, where you don't have to play a persona, where you don't have to edit yourself, where you know your strengths, where you don't audition for approval because it comes from you, when you're rooted and grounded in your body and you know how to achieve it. And then when people achieve it, when people start knowing how to root and ground themselves in the body and connect with their heart and themselves, it's like that's the relief. And this is where you're not desperate and where you don't need things from the outside and people from the outside, because validation and peace doesn't come, it's not conditional to anyone being bought, anything being bought or anyone giving it to you. This is where your heart can open to yourself. And I'm sending love. How do we do that? Right? So, register for my masterclass, link in bio. If you are a self-learner and you don't want my involvement, my program is called Mechanics of Mental Health. It's 8 hours of material about different parts of the nervous system. It's the math, it's the theory, and 2 hours of practical. I've recorded it. It's somatic work. It's building presence in the body and building presence and trust and safety, right? It's 28 lessons and 28 exercises. You can do it in 4 weeks. It has to be done gradually and gently, and that's the framework. It's £149. That's 2 years of therapy you can do it in 4 weeks, right? Depending on your commitment, depending on, but you have access for life to those teachings, and there is no involvement on my part, but I do look after people, and you can send me questions or whatever. I have short courses, 2-hour courses on specific states. Now I've recorded fight, flight, and hide. So depression and collapse. It's in link in my bio. They're very cheap. They're £28. I can't go any lower than this. It's a joke. But I take you through the sequence there, and you're going to learn the theory if you like, and everyone should know what they're doing, right? Because nervous system is very specific. That's under 2 hours. In under 2 hours, you can understand how to come out of survival and how to build the trust. Your nervous system hates forcing. Your nervous system you can't outthink your state, so you need to do it gradually. And nervous system hygiene will become a thing for everything. Weight loss, achieving goals, everything. Because we are dysregulated, and this is me giving back and paying back, because I've learned this information, I've received this information, shall I say, and this should be available to anyone. So this is how. Link in bio. Any question? Thank you for all the roses. Thank you very much. What people do is, this is your main, if that's your main structure, and then people go on the 1st of January, right? They sit down and they go, I want to earn 5k by June. I want to find love. I want to, I don't know, buy a puppy. And I want to, I don't know, tell me something. Tell me some of your goals that you've been recreating for quite a long time. This is your safety zone. This is your safety. Right? Safety zone. This is your what has worked before, how you survived, and nervous system trusts experience. It doesn't trust ideas. And when you put this on a piece of paper, very often it's just too scary for the nervous system. That's not safe. That not only will require you, because that's done from the wanting, this is what I want, even though it's, right? Find purpose. Set some goals. Okay. Right? And people make it too scary. The nervous system doesn't jump. The nervous system will never allow you. This is why people self-sabotage. This is why people sabotage their goals. It's just too scary. So when talking about income, they talk about a container. That identity is very comfortable with 1.5K, and that's what your ceiling is. It's not going to jump to that, because not only it requires you to, that identity is a very different identity. This is someone who is not scared of responsibility. This is someone who is not scared of emotional intimacy. This is scary. If you are emotionally not, this is how you relate. So if you're in flight mode, for example, people are very scary to you, right? So how are you going to find that? How are you going to find love? You're not going to be open. This is a locked in, closed system that is in protection mode. You're not going to allow, even if you trip over this, you're not going to accept this, right? You just set goals because everyone is doing it. This is just an example. But this is, again, you're going to burn out, you're going to collapse. You're going to keep doing all these things because it feels like you. So the idea is to build safety, right? Slowly. So you can take baby steps towards this and build the momentum, and then things unravel for you. But trust needs to be earned with the body, right? With your choices. Your body only cares about your choices and your environment. It doesn't care about what you do once a month. It doesn't care about the lady on TikTok who is talking to you now. It doesn't care. Your nervous system is not listening to me. Your mind is, and your mind is already arguing because your ego doesn't want you to grow. Your ego is taking every single statement that I am saying and doubts it. Because growth, it's not what's promoted, and because ego knows that it will stop existing and stop being the boss. And ego will love being right about itself. Ego is the doubter. Oh, that cannot be that easy. It cannot be that cheap. This is bullshit. This doesn't have value. And all of that, all of those excuses for not growing. When in flight mode, I did all my goals. So that's another thing that people have been told. Oh, it takes years. Oh, it's hard. I love that one. It's hard, right? What's hard? What's hard? Being yourself takes no energy. Being expressive and expressing your truth, because this identity lies. Because you don't speak the truth, because you're afraid of rejection. You don't take your place because you're afraid of being disliked, because you have so much shame and you can't handle rejection. You take everything personally. You're busy putting fires out here. This person, this identity, doesn't give a, right? Because what others think about you, it's not relevant. This identity is stuck in an emotional age of what? 14, 17 at the most, right? This identity is emotionally mature and knows that how other people perceive you has nothing to do with you, it's more to do with them. So you're not auditioning here, you're not editing yourself, you're being yourself, you're being natural. I know you can't even comprehend it, that's not possible. But maybe you know someone who has worked on themselves and changed their life from inside out. Life is always changed from the inside out. It's from actually releasing guilt, for example. What have you done that you feel guilty? Stop putting yourself on trial, etc. So this is how, when I work with people, I work with specific pattern, because you have a very specific pattern. And this is the inner work. And this is the only work, consciousness work is the only work that lasts and is sustainable, because I teach you the skill, and my programs teach you this skill. So you can heal yourself, whatever. Once you know the sequence, oh, okay, this is how it's done. Okay, this is what's happening. You become the observer. You are the teacher. You are your own mentor, because you know how your psyche and your mind works and why. Because only once we know the why, we know the how, right? So these are my programs, these are my teachings. Get in touch, go into my profile, register for the, I'm getting really tired, so I'm slowing down. This bio, thank you. So this identity is never ready. This identity is never ready. This identity always waits for wanting to be ready, or I need to read one more book, or people ask me, which books do you recommend? That's the problem. That's the problem. Because the sequence, if you think I need more, you're still trying to fill the void, you're still trying to not to take action. You're still trying, because I understand, because you haven't reorganized the state, you still don't feel safe with the change and recalibration and expansion. And look, for some people, non-action is action, very good, yes. For some people, being in flow, being in parasympathetic response, is resting. Ability to rest, ability to enjoy their life. A lot of people have a lot and everything is fine on paper, right? I worked with very successful people and everything was great on paper and then on the outside, but this is not who we are what's on the inside. Once you achieve the regulation state, this is where you can actually think, think about what you want to do, because a lot of people have a lot of options. This is where you can start taking care of your income or your dreams, or start cutting off toxic people or toxic habits or whatever. But if the habits are serving you and help you to cope, then it's very difficult. And this is what a lot of people do. They try to change the habit, right? Without going into the core of the issue, of the root of the issue. And that's why they relapse. Because you can be able to stop doing something for a month or 2 or 3, but next crisis, next difficulty, next illness, next stress, you're going to be back to normal, because your normal is this. Mel, we're working through it, don't worry. You have shared so many important essential insights to help understand and be strong progress. The goal should be no goals, no expectations, no disappointment, flow in a low life. Yeah, I use the word goal because this is how we operate. But what I mean by this is being able to be okay with yourself, being comfortable with being yourself, and then deciding. And again, goals can be different. Goals can be taking a break. Goals can be writing the book you've been wanting to write. Goals can be finding a relationship that you really, really want, not the one that you always settled for, right? So goals can be very different. Or rest, right? Why do we have to drive ourselves to the ground in order to take a break and enjoy life? And enjoy life and be who we are. We're human beings. We're not human doings. We're not human havings. We're human beings, right? And as I said, Rest, digest, and regenerate. This is where the body regenerates. This is where your consciousness recalibrates. Right? When it comes to doing, like what is the process, what is the thing, what is the skill here? It's courage. This is what flips the switch from survival identity. And what is courage? In each case of each state is a different thing. Courage is about doing something different to what you've been doing before. And courage is choosing yourself, because survival identity is about abandoning yourself, pleasing others, not yourself. It's about really not knowing yourself. Courage is, hey, I'm here, my time is running out, we're all gonna die, so I may as well have a good go and expressing myself, because you're either contributing to chaos or you're either contributing to peace. That's the truth. You're either contributing, you're very important, you're either contributing to, and especially if you have children, you're either contributing to raise of consciousness or dropping consciousness, right? So you are important, your input is absolutely essential. All of us, we have to individually now take responsibility for our piece of the world, for our nervous system, because guess what? You're either dysregulating others or regulating others. And how about, for a purpose, Alison, to be a regulator? Because you said, find my purpose. To be a regulator, to be an example that things can be done, and being autonomous human as we all are. And if you were half this busy with finding courage as you are with finding excuses, all of us, like, we would be in a different place. But maybe we can stop complaining about the world going into shit and let's elevate ourselves. Let's become conscious, responsible, accountable human beings, because what we're doing so far is not really working for us, is it? Once you find a way in yourself, and what is courage? You know, courage is choosing yourself, right? And giving it a proper go, and understanding that you're learning, that it's baby steps, that the past doesn't define you, and there is no such thing as failure. There is no such thing as right and wrong. And you know, being courageous, being encouraging to yourself. Because as you can see, society is not doing that for us, is it? Right? Stuck. Okay, any more questions? You can ask me questions about your life, your mental health. We're just going to wrap up slowly. Keep tapping, please, because I'm having my own goals now. People yesterday, you motivated me, guys. Thank you. And also, you know, like, with everything that goes on now, with what comes up, what resurfaces, this is because people have not been speaking up, because people have accepted low standards in their families, how we speak to each other, how we justify really low standards, how we treat children, how we bring up children, what do we think about childhood. It's a very vulnerable, it should be protected. Children are very vulnerable and should be protected. And what do you think of children? Like, how do we treat them? It's very low level of consciousness. that we haven't made any progress, guys. We haven't. Younger and younger children are being diagnosed with things, being medicalized. What does serious indecision say about a person? I have been seriously indecisive. It just shows that it's nothing about you. It's your consciousness. It's fear. So the doubt is just how we name fear, right? Could be freeze state. Very good, Alison. Right? One of the expressions. It could be freeze. It could be maybe you're a people pleaser. It doesn't matter that you've traveled. It's really nothing that you do. That's another thing. Nothing that you do makes you a better or a worse person. So, you know, people think that because they're vegan, they're better people, or people think that because they drink that it's a moral choice. No, these are loops in your field, right, that you keep repeating. You are a pattern repetition system. That's consciousness. So if you looping around certain things, you will be looping about certain things. So going after yourself with, oh, you know, I'm not enough, I'm not ready, oh, you know, it's difficult, I don't have it in me. It's just fear, apathy, shame disguised as putting yourself down. Love your approach, thank you. My nervous system gets totally dysregulated around an employee who bullies me at work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And who is your employee reminds you of? From your past, from your childhood? Because the people who trigger us, the people from the past. This is how your nervous system interprets the bullying and the triggering, right? So that your employee maybe it reminds you of your sibling, or maybe of your parent or something. Your nervous system knows this energy, that's why it's triggered. It knows this manipulation, it knows this, he knows or she knows how to pull the triggers. It's fascinating. Shimmering blue water. So if you were to remove, I find I always go back to the advice of my parents, then I have difficult decision to make, I feel. Oh. Yeah, I feel I don't trust myself, yeah. You haven't cut the umbilical cord. Are you young or? Hi, I would like to do the course on the 22nd. Link in bio. When you go into my profile and you click on the link tree, then the first it's called Meet Your Nervous System, and you just put your email and you'll get a link. Even though I'm not that young anymore, I can be quite childish in my mind. I don't know why. No, so I actually from the three things I can tell you that you are a people pleaser. So I quit my job because her bulk wouldn't stop and my head was fried. So I quit my job because that bulky wouldn't stop and my nervous system was fried. Not young, no, late 30s. Okay, and you still go back to advice of your parents. Bully, yeah. So you see, in survival identity, in survival state, this is what I keep on saying, you're very triggerable. You take things personally. Your system is under threat. You read your environment still, just like in survival, in childhood, that you had to do in childhood. What does others say or do? Because like I used to be, and you haven't watched me much. I think we're meeting for the first time, but sometimes I have people here who would literally give me a hard time, or who would try to provoke me big time. I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a university lecturer, I haven't been doing this for a long time. But because my nervous system is so regulated by this point, that they cannot wobble me at all. They can't wobble me. And this is quite a vulnerable position, okay? So this is what a regulated, rooted, grounded nervous system is. Nothing can touch you unless you give them your permission, because obviously, you know, my husband can really trigger me, but that's very personal. If you're brilliant, I find you very good. But otherwise, I'm not triggerable. I don't respond, and the only person who would have that power is my mother. But again, I have cut the cord. I still speak to her, but I don't allow. I'm protector. I know how to protect myself. I know how to speak to myself. I know how to prepare, because a lot of people don't prepare their nervous system for things. We just gear up, we drink coffee and we go. This is like you are exposing yourself to that energy, and your nervous system is just doing its job, protecting you, so go into survival. And you are triggered and you collapse into survival. You're not your autonomous self. You don't know how to put boundaries. You don't know how to say, hey. You don't know even how to lead the conversation. Because I can finish, if I can see that someone is, although I'm no longer, I don't do things I don't want to, basically, and I don't hang out with people I don't want to. This is the beauty of this stage of life. So, and I work for myself, so my boss is really, I argue with my boss a lot, which is me, but, that's life. But on the whole, I am very stable, right? Things get to me only if I allow them to, only if I want to think about it, or if I give permission to enter my consciousness. Its other word for regulation is coherence. Your field is coherent. How long are you in that state? When did you sleep last time? I don't know what you mean. It was this morning. So it's a journey, it's a transformation, but it's totally worth it. Because this is, you can act. When you can act and make decisions for yourself, from not being reactive but being responsive, from choices, because survival identity is very reactive. The other identity, the authentic identity, is very responsive, and has a choice how to respond to people, to environment, how to respond to opportunities. Even like this, in this, you only see what you see. You have a lot of mechanisms in your brain, like confirmation bias, self-serving bias, and your default mode network works in a way to protect you from growth and elevation and expansion. only this, you will attract totally different people. That's the law of attraction. There seems to be no way to not get triggered by this employee. The brain is loyal to the identity that you had to build in your childhood. There seems to be no way to not get triggered by this employee. I have a lot of compassion. I understand what you mean, but that's just because it's your perspective doesn't make it a fact, right? Like what? Did you have a gun to your head? Right? No. It's... Do you take any medication? Or have you stopped? What? It's like, do you want me to block you? So we're going to wrap up. Anyway, links in bio. DM me if you want some one-to-one work. Sometimes it's one session only for people to get really clear. Because this is foggy, this is authenticity is very clear, you know really what you want. You're very intentional. When you're authentic, you're very intentional, so you know exactly what you want. Because you chose that and you can formulate an intention. When your brain is not working optimally and your mind and it's foggy, thank you, Mary. Like the bully would stalk me at work and specifically target me. Probably. How many mechanisms exist? Oh my God, in the brain you mean? Oof. A lot. A lot. There are 5 core states, 5 expressions of sympathetic response, so the stress response, so fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and hide. But when it comes to the brain has so many different areas responsible for so many different things. So thank you very much, guys. Have a lovely, relaxing night. Sleep well. Allow everything to integrate. This is when brain plasticity actually takes place. It gets integrated. So you've learned a lot today. You have, I really appreciate every one of you. You are remembering. This is not learning, this is unlearning. Inner reality is the only reality that you can control. Inner reality and inner state creates your experience. So if we want to change what we experience, we need to change the inner state. If you want to dig deeper, you know where to find me. Thank you very much. Have a lovely night. Bye-bye.